Welcome to Goosebumps. Hey guys, welcome back to the final two chapters, 35 and 36 of Slappy Birthday to You, the first book of the Slappy World series. Now, every time we read, it was a cliffhanger. Don't think that the cliffhanger's over, because there are more books to this series. Take a look at them in the local library. Rent them. Check them out. Go through them. You don't have to have a cliffhanger. You can continue reading. But let's get started and let's finish the book today. Chapter 35. Ian screamed as the first doll attacked him. It was a tall boy doll, red hair, its eyes missing. Ian tried to kick it away, but it leaped above his shoe and grabbed onto the front of his t-shirt. Two one-legged dolls scrabbling across the work table and dove onto Mr. Barker's back. As he wrestled with them, a legless doll clung to the right leg with both hands. Another doll bounded onto his head and lowered itself over his face, trying to smother him. The dolls came hurtling down from the shelves. The basement floor was covered with their broken, ugly bodies. They staggered and slipped and jumped forward, all silent, all moving toward Ian and the others. Slaves, broken doll slaves, all following Slappy's orders. Johnny and Vinny were down on their backs on the floor, wrestling with large cloth dolls. Molly kicked away a headless Barbie doll, but she was instantly swarmed over by three large one-armed baby dolls. The screams and cries of the humans were nearly drowned out by the scrape and clatter of the dolls as they attacked. And rising over all the sounds of horror were the cackling bursts of evil laughter from the open-mouthed dummy head on the work table. And then, as Ian struggled to push a furry bear doll off his face, he saw Slappy's body staggering toward him. Ian heaved the bear doll across the basement. Two headless dolls clung to his knees, climbing up his legs. Slappy's body slid past Ian. Its bow tie was still in place. Even though its head was missing, the body stepped to the work table, grabbed its head in both hands, and stuck it back in place on its wooden neck. "No!" Ian screamed, as two dolls shoved his legs from behind and he started to fall. His knees collapsed and he dropped to the floor on his back. Half a dozen more broken dolls swarmed onto him. He kicked and thrashed, tried to roll over, but they held him in place. A big blonde bride doll sprawled over his mouth and nose. It pressed its white bridal gown down on its face. Ian struggled to breathe. Suddenly, a voice rang out over the clatter and cried, "Stop!" With a groan, Ian shoved the bride doll off his face. He pulled himself to a sitting position. He gasped as he saw Abigail, Molly's antique doll, leap from Molly's arms and stride across the basement floor. Abigail jumped onto the work table. "Stop! Stop it now!" she cried in a squeaky, high voice. The dolls continued to swarm the humans. Slappy, his head back in its place, moved quickly towards Abigail. "Who are you?" the dummy screamed angrily. "How dare you try to stop my doll slaves?" He made a grab for Abigail, but she slid out of his grasp. With her delicate painted face and shimmery blue eyes, she turned to face him. Her pale lips slid open, and her squeaky voice came out loud and clear as she shouted, "Karu Mari Atana Loma Molonu Karano." Chapter 36. Slappy blinked a few times. Then his eyes snapped shut. His body folded onto itself. Slappy crumbled to the floor at Ian's feet, and his head fell off. Ian watched it roll to the wall. Slappy's body didn't move. Sitting at the edge of the work table, Abigail gazed down at it. She had a faint smile on her pale lips. Otherwise, her expression was blank. The broken dolls all collapsed to the floor. They lay on their backs, their stomachs, their sides, lifeless and still. Johnny, on his back on the floor, lifted a large baby doll off his chest and heaved it across the room. He stood up, breathing hard, his face red and sweat-drenched. He reached a hand down and helped Vinny to his feet. Vinny still had a doll wrapped around his shoulders. He shook his body and sent it clattering to the floor. Ian stood close to his dad. They both gazed around the room, stared in amazement at the carpet of dolls over the floor. Broken dolls that had come to life, that tried to kill them. "We're okay," Mr. Barker said finally. A smile spread over his face. "We're okay." And then, suddenly, they were hugging. A group hug, a celebration of their triumph. Slappy was asleep, no longer able to harm them. They hugged and laughed, and Mr. Barker had happy tears in his eyes. He put an arm around Ian's shoulders and shook his head. "Ian," he said, "I guess Slappy wasn't the best birthday present I ever gave you. Don't worry, I'm going to lock him away where no one will ever find him." "Good," said a voice behind them. Ian turned to see Abigail standing on the work table. Her small hands pressed the sides of her old-fashioned gown. "Good," Abigail repeated, now that all eyes were on her. "I'm so tired of that dummy getting all the attention. Now clean up this mess, slaves, then bring me my lunch." Slappy Birthday Epilogue.
Slappy here, or what's left of Slappy. Did you ever read such a tragic ending? I'd cry my eyes out, but I'm trying to keep my head. Who is in charge here? I'm very unhappy. And when Slappy is unhappy, Slappy gets revenge. Heads will roll. Whoops. Did I really say that? Well, don't worry, slaves. I'll get myself together and I'll be back with another Goosebumps story. Remember, this is Slappy World. You only scream in it.
And I can hear you screaming from here. All right, guys, do your last project, answer those questions, and we'll see you on who knows what our next adventure might be. What's your adventure going to be?